Welcome back. I want to give my quick thoughts on this trade that we were given earlier today between the Detroit Lions and the Houston Texans. The Lions have traded running back David Montgomery to the Texans, which initially we thought was just a fifth-round pick. Soon after, it was updated to a fourth, a seventh, and Juice Scruggs in return for David Montgomery. And I think the value for the Lions, what they're getting in return, is phenomenal. This is a guy who was speculated the last few days about being not more so cut, but just being moved off of what the Lions. Montgomery kind of, initially turned it down, saying it was false, and then of course soon after we know what happened today with that. So I think the haul in return for the Lions makes sense. First off, before I get to the haul, makes sense because you look at Jahmyr Gibbs coming in the horizon with a massive contract, whether he'll be up, certainly one of, or maybe potentially being the number one guy, the new number one guy paid per year on a year average, I should say, for his next deal. Wouldn't surprise me at all. He's been one of the best running backs in the league, certainly the last 2 years, over 1,300 yards rushing the last 2 seasons, double-digit touchdowns the last 2 years as well. He is going to be one of their top players, one of their big pieces on offense, no question about that. And it makes no sense, too, with him getting that big payday relatively soon, as well as having Montgomery making $6 million upcoming year. I did get it wrong when I tweeted initially. Maybe the numbers changed, or I accidentally looked at 2025 for it. I think I did put like $8 million. He was set to make. Montgomery's going to make $6 million in 2026, and then $9 million next year in 2027. So technically, if you really wanted to play it out, you could certainly have, of course, the fourth year now, pick up the fifth year option, and have Montgomery as with alongside there with the $6 million this year, $9 million the year after, and have the bell cow duo for 2 more years if they really wanted to do it that. But it makes no sense because they certainly have other needs as well. They can use that money elsewhere and just replace Montgomery with the same old talk about running backs dime a dozen. You can just pick one in the later rounds, get the same production, cheaper, younger in that regard. So that does fit the narrative for this one. Again, on top of with Gibbs getting that big payday, he's going to be more of a bell cow for the Lions. I view this similar to the Bills, where Cook was not. It was definitely in a crowded backfield a little bit, where he was still the dominant guy, but it was, I think, around his usage rate was like around 50, a little over like 50%. Maybe it was 54%. It wasn't that immense, and certainly was a little bit controversial when he got his contract as well, because you looked at Ray Davis, you looked at Ty Johnson, and then once he got his payday, that completely changed. He was the bulk guy, the bell cow per se, the volume guy, getting most of the carries, and that completely flipped on its head, where it was kind of split between 3 guys, and then more so, with split between 3 guys, still, Cook being the majority guy, but still split between 3 guys to Cook dominating that. And I do see that similar to the Lions, where you do have the 1A, 1B, which were great the last 2 seasons. This year, definitely took a little step back more for Montgomery, but wasn't horrible for this one. Certainly struggled with, of course, Ben Johnson no longer being there, but still was still a good pairing, no doubt about that, with those two for the last 3 years. So you go from that to now Gibbs, again, on the horizon, getting his new contract, and that's going to be changing like Cooks for the Bills there. The volume is going to be ramped up even more for Gibbs. So again, it doesn't make any sense for Montgomery to be there with the contract when you can just replace him for a guy making pennies on the dollar compared to what he's making, younger, faster, and so forth. So from the Lions' perspective, from that look at it, I have no issue with that. It was bound to happen, of course, with it. Not saying Montgomery is washed. He's a bad player anymore. It's just the money didn't make any sense at this point here, especially with Gibbs on the horizon, as well as other places that he can use that money elsewhere. Now, looking at for the return, I think it was great. A 4th, a 7th round pick is great, especially more so for the 4th round pick. And then for Juice Scruggs, you just get depth at that offensive line, which they still are going to put more, certainly more assets into, whether it's free agency or the draft, to kind of bolster that offensive line a little bit more with that. More so kind of the interior offensive line with that as well. Now, looking at for the Houston Texans, I was surprised Houston was going to make the trade for this one. When I looked at this past year with, Joe Mixon played well in 2024. Unfortunately, he missed the whole season with the foot injury. Kind of a little weird with that story, where it looked like he was going to come back and just got pushed back each week farther and farther and farther, to the point where he was out for basically the whole season. Nick Chubb had a decent bounce back from all his brutal injuries from Cleveland, but still was a lot left to be desired in that one. You did have some nice pick up some nice production here and there from other running backs in that backfield, but certainly it was time that they had to really help CJ Stroud in his go into his fourth year now, and really a pivotal year for him too, trying to decide if he's the franchise quarterback or not. Certainly a lot of shaky grounds with him, especially how he played in the playoffs. So you want to give him the most help as possible. Of course, we saw the trade where they got rid of one of his offensive linemen. That we can, that's a different story, a different topic for a different day. Controversial, say at least on social media for that regard of it too. So you have the offensive line; they still have to try and figure out as well. But more importantly, the backfield. It was bad to say at least. To put it nicely, it was one of the worst backfields in the league. Certainly did not help. Again, did you get some production, a time or two from running backs throughout the season? Yes, but it could be much better. And when you look at the board here for, at least for PFF, before you get into the kind of stats there, more so the 40-yard dash per se, you look at, besides Jeremiah Love, who's going to be, of course, well off the table, but before the Texans draft there, you have everyone else at your disposal. You have Jadarian Price, you have Jonah Coleman, someone that really stood out in the combine, which I would not be surprised if he just rises up people's draft boards. If you saw, the whole running back group played, was tested well at the combine. So I've seen people rave about it. Mike Washington Jr. really played well. They did well at the combine. Of course, he was the fastest guy, 4.3, ahead of Jeremiah Love, which, again, you look at the size there, 6'1", 6'2". It kind of varies, of course, where they land there. You look at that. You look at the split as well. Number one in that one with 1.51 or 1.51, I should say, as well as being second with the vertical jump, if you care about that. Broad jump as well, if you kind of move over to this one as well, was second in that one, 10 feet 8 inches. The 3-cone drill, if you want to look at, only just Ahmed Johnson, this one. But you look at, for the most part here, kind of going over from the shuffle. I don't know if Washington participated in that one, though. And bench press, don't see him on there too. I don't know if he did that, but especially the first few I saw was just a dash, the split, the vertical, and the broad jump. That's the only ones I saw. I wasn't able to watch most of the combine per se. At least I was a decent amount, I should say, I watched. But when you look at that, Mike Washington was someone that really tested well, and among with all the other guys. So that you look at that, and you thought the Texans would just go the route of getting someone who's more explosive, that's cheaper. You can certainly target somebody in the second round. I think any selection at this point here wouldn't be bad at all. And I thought it'd just make more sense to go that route. I felt like they were going to go that route and not go with a little bit, older, aging running back. And again, I don't want to, put that label on there, Montgomery, and make it sound like that he is a washed player. He's, past his prime and so forth. He still has a couple more years to offer, which I think kind of, lines up perfectly with his contract with 2026 and 2027. He'll set to be a free agent in 2028 here, or 2020, so 2028 there, it's a void year. This is unrestricted free in 2020. Yeah, sorry, I don't know why it's just 2 years for 2028. I don't know why it's kind of messing me up there. But in 2028, he'll be a free agent, age 31. So again, I think you have 2 more years of good production there, which I think they're looking at right now. Again, I think it is more so, of course, the win now situation. When you look at the defense and how well they played this year, it's tough to kind of replicate the numbers they did this year going to next year. But certainly you have a bulk portion of that core there, especially the front four, as of course with Hunter and Will Anderson, of course Derek Stingley Jr. and other players you want to name on that defense as well. It is still a great defense. Even if they don't match up the numbers perfectly to, from next year to this past season, they will still play well. You have Nico Collins as well, who's a great wide receiver. You just need a few more pieces for CJ Stroud, because if they feel like this defense is, certainly they proved it this year, good enough to win a Super Bowl, no question about that. They just need help. They need more production in the offense, specifically with CJ Stroud. And again, going to his 4th year, which is pivotal. They're going to have to really decide, is this our franchise guy or not? And of course, it'll be the 5th year. They'll extend and exercise that 5th year option to be, maybe if he does have a bounce back season in year 4, use that 5th year option just one more time, just to make sure that he is who they think they are with that. So it is a win now situation. So a point, I understand why they made the move to get David Montgomery. I don't hate it. Again, I'm a little bit surprised. I thought they would just go in a younger option, a younger path, a younger option for that position. But again, when you look at Montgomery, what I talked about being productive in Detroit here in a split backfield, he's been phenomenal. More so the red zone, goal line type of running back, getting more of those touchdowns there. He had 1,000 yards his first year with Detroit, 13 touchdowns in 2024 in their great season as well. Of course, inevitably end up falling short in the divisional round against Washington. Played well. The rushing yards were down to 775, but still productive in the touchdown category, 12 touchdowns. And then this past season, 716, 8 touchdowns. But again, kind of suffered a little bit because of just the a little bit taking a step back without Ben Johnson being there for the first year with his first year not being in Detroit, going to Chicago, of course. So it did take a little bit of a step back there, a little bit of problems on that side of the ball at times, but still was productive to say the least. Even with kind of shaky grounds at times with the offense, was still productive. And you look at the last 2 years. The volume isn't crazy, under 200 carries the last 2 seasons, and not that much over 200. Even his first year in Detroit with 219. So there is still there's still some tread on the tires. Again, I think he can still give you 2 more good years in his career, which again lines up perfectly with his contract. Will you feel like at that point there next year in 2027 he's worth $9 million at that point? Who knows? I mean, I would not be surprised if it's kind of a one and done situation, depending on, of course, how he plays this year and injuries and so forth with that regard. But I think overall it's a good trade. I would favor the Detroit Lions winning this one. You get them off the books, you get them off the cap, however how much that cap they have to eat at that point there. But certainly get off the books, save some money, you get some good picks, some decent draft capital in this upcoming draft, more so the 4th round pick. And again, you get depth at that offensive line there with Scruggs. So I think for both sides, it's fair. I would favor, of course, again, the Detroit Lions win the trade, but you get picks, you get depth of the offensive line, as well as the Houston Texans, where you get your replacement at running back, who is still productive, can still put up some good numbers, and is more of that win now situation. Looking for that veteran leadership for the Houston Texans. So we'll see how it plays out there. We'll see who the Detroit Lions get to replace Montgomery, but again, whether it's free agency for a cheap contract or they go in the draft in the later rounds and pick someone up, we'll be interested to see who they pick up there, as well as for the Houston Texans, how Montgomery does in his first year with Houston. I think he'll put some solid numbers. If I had to kind of make an early guess with this one, I mean, the offensive line is shaky, of course. I would say in terms of rushing yards, look at 2023. I think he'll be a fringe 1,000 yard receiver, 1,000 yard rusher, maybe a little bit over 1,000 yards rushing. Touchdowns, I'm not sure. I think he'd be under double digits for the Texans, but I would say a fringe 1,000 yard rusher, just under double digits for rushing touchdowns. I think, and that's what they're looking for. I think they're looking for someone that can give you that, because it was pretty abysmal in the running game for the Texans this year with Chubb and whoever you want to throw in the mix there for that rotation at the running back position. So if you can get someone like that stable, that is good enough at this point here, is that worth $6 million? Probably not. But I think for the veteran leadership and what you can still offer for that, especially the goal line situations, I mean, again, I think that at this point here, it's a win now situation for them, more so trying to help C.A. Stroud. Again, I think all around for this trade, it is a fair trade for both sides here. Again, leaning towards maybe the Detroit Lions, but still, I don't think there's truly any losers in this one off of face value for this. So again, we'll see how both teams do. We'll see how Montgomery does with his new destination in Houston, and we'll see what the Detroit Lions do in their replacement for Montgomery.